Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, the Fall 2022 series of webinars. We've got Sharon Justice, who's a former faculty member. You all, most of you probably know her already. Former faculty member, retired recently from the College of Business at ECU. She's the founder of Justice Leadership, where she's now a human resource consultant, and she's one of our original team members for the executive farm management program here. So we're fortunate to have her this morning to talk about the do's and don'ts when establishing a bonus program in your agribusiness. So I'd just like to go ahead and turn it over to Sharon, and we can have she can actually just tell you how she wants to handle questions, I guess,
Cool.
at this point. So thank you very much
Thanks,
for being
Michael.
with us.
And I'm not going anywhere for the EFM. I'm still going to be on the faculty there, just not teaching regularly at ECU. So I'm excited to see some familiar faces. We have a small group this morning, so if y'all have questions, I am here to do my best to answer. I have planned for it to be pretty informal so that, again, compensation is complex. And depending on your organization, you're going to have different needs. So what I hope to do today is just, if you're not already paying in variable pay, bonuses, incentives, commission, that we can talk a little bit about what the options are, what are the things you need to look out for, and then how do you begin to actually move forward in implementing some of this. So I'm curious. So we've got Whitney, Gary, and Jose. Do y'all currently offer some kind of, well, let me do it this way. So variable pay, just as the definition, let me share my screen and get some things started here. So y'all can see that. So variable pay is any kind of pay that is not part of your base compensation, your hourly or weekly rate of pay. So variable pay takes on lots of forms. It can be a gift card that you give. It can be cash. It can be gifts in kind. It can be based on production targets. It can be just sprinkle money because, hey, I like you and I just want to give you a little cash to go fill up your gas tank, or a Christmas bonus is what we often will hear people talking about. So variable pay is not tied to your ongoing recurring expense like base pay is. So if you hire me full time, that base pay, that compensation for me is recurring every single week or every single month. And that is part of your fixed cost, even though it might change. It's built into the cost structure of your business. Variable pay is not recurring. So when you give somebody a bonus this year, you are not increasing your bottom line payroll line item. What you're doing is you have a line item for incentive or any kind of variable compensation that you can control year after year. You're not obligated to do it if you write it well. So who in here has some kind of variable pay? I'm going to hit the admit.
We do some Christmas bonuses.
Okay, you do some Christmas bonuses. Whitney, how about y'all? Can you unmute?
We don't right now, just as a newer company, but we would like to implement it in the future, potentially from a production standpoint.
Okay.
So we've thrown around the idea of like a production bonus.
Okay, good. Peppy, how about you? Can you?
Yeah, we do have some. We do have some Christmas bonuses as well. And
so you have Christmas bonuses.
Yeah, and we were thinking about doing some type of a hiring bonus too for new employees.
Okay, so a hiring bonus is a great example of some variable pay. I didn't even talk about that, but a hiring bonus can be used to help sweeten the pot or sweeten the offer, but it's not attached to your ongoing rate of pay. And that in today's market, that is a very effective tool to get people to move from one place to the other. It is an effective tool to help you attract talent that is skilled and they've got maybe some competing offers and you really want them to come over. Did Rob join? Yeah, Rob, are y'all paying anything? Good morning. Not, are you paying
Good
anything?
morning. Sorry, I'm muted and working on a peanut combine.
That's okay. I figured y'all are getting stuff in because the rain's coming.
Yeah, and 40 more acres and I'll be done with them.
All right.
But yeah, yes, as far as the bonus, actually it's a percentage rate
Okay.
per hour.
Okay.
That's what's paid as Christmas bonus.
Okay. So most of you have, if you've got to pay a variable pay in place, it's around some kind of Christmas bonus. So the first thing that I want you to think about is why, what are you communicating with this pay? What is your message? Because pay drives performance or pay drives behaviors. So you have your current hourly rate of pay, you know what is expected, or your salary rate of pay, you know what's expected. But the communication of the purpose of this extra variable pay is critical, because you don't want to just give money out freely without having something tied to it. At least my advice is don't just give something freely out without some kind of cohesive communication message, what it is that you are trying to do, motivate, recognize with this pay. So the variable pay range approach, you can have an appreciation. Hey, thanks for what you're doing. That's a gift card. That is a $200 bonus at Christmas, whatever the case is. You can have some kind of recognition for contribution. And I'll put that in the bucket of incentive pay. So if our company achieved this target, then we all shared in that. And so I want to give everybody an appropriate contribution toward their, money toward their contribution that they made to achieving that target or that goal or outstanding recognition. And then on the far side is paying for production. And that's more of a commission plan, because if you do X, I will pay you Y. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't change. It's every time you do X, I'm going to give you Y. And then you turn that into your commission structure. So you're paying for production. So I just wanted to get the terminology out there so that we were all on the same page with what I mean with some of these terms. So for a bonus, you decide what you're communicating. Number one, if you're just saying appreciation, that's good. Anything else with a bonus, I'm going to caution you, because if it's based on performance, if it's based on any kind of performance contribution, it moves closer to an incentive and things can become expected. And so that's what you just want to be really cautious of, because incentive or variable pay over time can become an expectation. And when something happens and you don't pay that, then you got a problem, and it actually can be a demotivator. So compensation is complex, and there's a very fine line as to how you want to manage that contribution. So amounts can range. Particularly in a bonus, like a Christmas bonus or an end of harvest bonus, some kind of, you had a store and then you closed the store at the end of the season. So whatever that bonus is, there's a wide range of just bonuses. Generally, they're going to fall between 200 and 2,000, for example. They can be more than that, but just for a range, you can see that it can be a little bit or it can be a lot. You want to make it meaningful. A $10 bonus can hardly buy you a cup of coffee anymore. And so that's sort of the sprinkle all around. If you want to give people gift cards and you want to give, a Starbucks card or a grocery card or a gas card, that's one thing. Now, caution, there are some implications to taxable earnings for those gift cards. So you need to keep it $50 or less generally. It might have gone up to 100 recently, but just know that that can be a taxable income for your employee. All of the things that I'm talking about, bonus, commission, incentive, are all taxable income for employees. They're just paid differently, is not part of their regular every 2-week paycheck. One idea that people will use, it's either a percent of pay, or it can be equivalent to 1 week's pay. That seems to be the trend and has been for a little while, that if it's going to be meaningful, like a holiday bonus or an end of season bonus, you know, an equivalent to 1 week's pay seems pretty meaningful to an employee. It can help to bridge a gap, something like that. So you want to think about how much you're willing to pay and what it means to that employee. Anybody Christmas Vacation fans out here? Have you seen the movie? You got to give me a yes, a thumbs up. So, all right, we're just going to have a laugh for a minute. So this is an excerpt from Christmas Vacation. All right, can y'all hear this? I got a note to turn up the volume. All right,
I couldn't hear it either.
You couldn't hear it either?
No.
Y'all need to let me know these things before we start just playing around. All right, hold on. Well, I'm gonna share my screen again. You gotta have the effect. So you've seen so far, we're not gonna restart it.
What the heck?
Can you hear it now?
Yeah.
Is this bonus check? I'm putting in a swimming pool. That's it. That's the big one.
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry if I've been a little short with everyone lately. I've been waiting for this bonus. To make sure the pool goes in as soon as the ground thaws, I had to lay out the money in advance. And until this little miracle arrived, I didn't have enough in my account to cover the check I wrote.
Tear the sucker open, Dad. Yeah. Drum roll.
There's enough left over. I'm going to fly you all down here to help us dedicate it.
I can't swim, Clark.
I know that, Eddie. Hey. Oh.
Clark, what's wrong? Honey. It's bigger than you expected? Smaller? What is it?
It's a 1-year membership in the Jelly of the Month Club.
Oh, God.
Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year. Trying to get y'all back. So a little tongue in cheek and a little funny. However, I want you to see the emotions on the cast and the impact. And what has happened is that Christmas bonus evidently was large enough in years past, multiple years past, to buy a swimming pool. And yet, as a bonus, the employer has full accountability and flexibility to pay whatever you want. However, When it starts to be expected, it's really part of your compensation. And in that situation, yeah, it's a movie, but honestly, that's what happens with employees. They become dependent on it, they expect it. And when it changes to what there's been historically, then there's a problem. And that's what you want to just make sure that you are not communicating and creating expectations that are really implied consistent compensation. And it's hard to keep out of that spot. And it is really, you've got to be intentional about how you share expectations and how you use that whole scenario of making sure that we've got somebody in the waiting room coming in, making sure that you're doing what you need to do. All right. We got one coming in. So we're going to let them hopefully come in. So now y'all can see my screen again. And for whatever reason, I can't see you. My Zoom is acting up this morning. But I got my chat open. So y'all ask questions or open up your mic. Carly or Michael, let me know if anybody is raising their hand. So bonuses can become expected based compensation. Incentives can become expected based compensation. You need to tie your variable compensation to some form of work that they did and what they did to contribute if you're going to pay incentive and if you're going to pay commission. Bonuses, don't try to, when you're talking to them, when you're delivering it, you're saying, wow, we're so thankful for what you did this year. Bonus is expressed for appreciation for what you did. So differentiate those two. Bonuses at the end of the year are great ways to say thanks to your employees, but they don't substitute for saying thank you. And that's the whole purpose of that bonus. So here's some other things to think about. Do you do a cash payout or check or direct deposit, or do you some kind of product? And the response here is, what would employees most appreciate? Some will advise that it's not best to give a product of your operation unless the employees, really want that. They'll sometimes see it as less valuable than it is. Make it personal and express that appreciation directly. So, if you raise cattle and you give a half a side of beef at the end of the year, know that the employee is probably not going to see it for the full value that it is and that what you're giving away. So you want to make sure that you're also communicating what that value is and how important it is that they enjoy what you're giving. Any questions about bonuses and how you give those? Those are the most discretionary, and you can do it when you want to. You can do it when you don't want to. Just try your best to keep it from being expected. Now let's dive a little deeper in additional forms of compensation. When you implement incentives or commission, you're really looking and trying to tie some kind of performance metric and a goal performance to their payout. And you want to create some targeted payouts, even documenting a plan. And you're constantly basing it on behaviors that you desire. It is important to tie compensation in incentives and commission to desired behaviors. However, be cautious, because what you ask for, you will get. The benefits of an incentive or commission or bonus plan is it does control those fixed costs. Any kind of annual increase adds to your fixed cost. It will push desired behaviors. Motivated top performers will achieve because they're driven by accomplishing that goal or that performance metric. Some less motivated employees or self-driven employees, it may do just the opposite. So here's the caution. If an employee feels like they can't ever achieve it, they'll go, oh, why even try? I'm not going to get paid for it, and Sue's going to get paid for it, so I'll let her go chase it, and I'm just going to show up for work. So really think about your employees and what motivates them, and understand that it doesn't work that way for everybody. Pay, believe it or not, is not the number one motivator for doing work. It is a reason that we work, but it's not your number one motivator. The benefit also is that it easily rewards some extra value, some extra effort, some going above and beyond. A lump sum is more impactful than payment spread over 24 pay periods. So just think about $5,000 in hand, even when you take out your employment taxes, makes a bigger impact than $5,000 spread over 12 months. And so that's another way to get somebody's attention and to create some lift and some enthusiasm and some recognition rather than just spreading it out over 24 months. All right, I'm pausing to see. Anybody have any questions? All right, I'll keep going. There's some pitfalls. Being inconsistent is a challenge. You can't just pay your favorites if you're going to differentiate, because people will talk. People will share. They will say, hey, I got this. Did you get this? Did you get your Christmas bonus yet? Clark is calling all of his friends in the movie, hey, did you get your bonus yet? Did you get your bonus yet? So they are all talking. So the challenge is being consistent yet differentiated. It does not mean that you have to pay every employee the same amount. It means that you have to be consistent in how you determine what employees receive and how they receive it. If you don't tie it to your organization or department or individual goals, then there's no line of sight. And it's like, well, how did I get that? That's great. But was there anything that I did to get it? So, and also it can be demotivating for low performing employees who feel like they can never achieve it, particularly on the incentive and the commission side. A bonus everybody gets. So what you expect or reward drives very specific behaviors, and it often can have unintended consequences. They now have a name for it. It's actually called the Wells Fargo effect. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Does anybody know what happened at Wells Fargo over the past 10 years? Have you heard about this? Probably not. Just because I'm in banking, I was there in that organization for many years, but it's hit the headlines. So Wells Fargo developed production incentives and performance incentives, and we're constantly driving behavior. So if you're a customer and you go in to open up a checking account, that banker got an incentive for every customer they open a checking account. Well, Wells Fargo got really smart and said, we want to cross-sell all of our products and services to a customer. So I want them to have a credit card, a savings account, an investment account, a safety deposit box. That's called cross-sell. And so they were incenting employees to cross-sell products. However, in a town the size of Washington, North Carolina, there are only so many customers. But yet their employee targets got higher and higher and higher with no regard to how much market share they had or what the possibility was. And Wells Fargo wasn't paying attention to these behaviors now are driving bad behaviors. So what happened is those bankers, in order to keep their incentive, which had become expected compensation flowing, they started opening up bogus accounts or selling credit cards or savings accounts to customers that didn't want it, because the choice was, it was a, you do this or this happens. They had to keep meeting their numbers and they were compensated for it, or they would get written up or ultimately lose their job. So the structure was severe and it did not work. And it actually led to bad behavior. So I caution you that if you're going to put production incentives in, so Whitney in particular in your organization, if you put production incentives in, be careful about sacrificing quality or all the steps that are required. So find ways to incent the right behaviors without creating this very negative repercussion, literally called the Wells Fargo effect now. And it's hard to do. I also will encourage you to change incentive metrics and change performance targets or behaviors that you're looking for. Change it up so that you don't create this unintended consequence of shortcutting or skipping steps or hiding or hoarding or not playing together as a team. If you make individual awards, then sometimes you can put team members against each other and they won't play well together. They won't work well and help each other out because that's taken away from their paycheck. So compensation is complicated. So incentive, just for further clarification, let me share my screen again. So incentive targets and rewards, you set targets that reward performance, and it's based on achieving goals. Great incentive plans incorporate company goals, department goals, individual goals, end of year goals. So there's lots of different touch points that it is rewarding. A commission is more piecemeal. So it's pay for an item, it's production, it's pay for sales. It can be flat, it can be variable. It just says that if you hit this, then it'll be a flat commission structure. If you do this and then you sell, $5,000 more, then you're going to earn extra money. That's a variable compensation plan. So a variable commission plan, that's your compensation. So there's lots of ways to structure your plan. Every organization's compensation or variable plan is going to be different based on the needs of the organization, the employees, the performance of the company. So again, these are just some basic parameters, lots to think about, and they can be pretty complex to implement if you really go into depth. So I want you to think it through. So a higher compensation level, is based on their personal contribution and the business profits. So, if the business doesn't perform really well, then you're going to have a low to a moderate reward. If the business performs well and the employee's contribution is well, then you're going to get a maximum reward. So I like to think about it, it's like these two levers: the business has to do well and the employee has to do well. You want to write your plans so that if the business has an off year, you're not obligated to pay. And that way, you're not bankrupting yourself by incentive plans or commission plans you put in place that are detrimental to the health of your organization. So here is a snapshot of how you might put a company-wide incentive plan in play. And it can be different. Now, this is not ag specific, but it's business specific. And so you'll see different levels of employees, from support staff to all different levels. They can have different incentive target opportunities. The target is usually a percentage of base pay, or it can be, we're going to have, our incentive target, we're going to have incentive of $100,000. Your target is 10% of that. So it'll be $10,000 is your incentive target. So that's what that target meant. But usually it is a percent of your salary. So if somebody is making $25,000 a year, which will be really, really low, they could have a 10% target opportunity, would give them $2,500 potential to earn at the end of the year. You don't have to pay that full amount out. That's just what their target is. So again, this is where that business lever is important. So if the corporate goal, the business goal, is not met, then you could have a hurdle to say, we will not pay any variable compensation at the end of the year unless our business achieves this minimum level of performance. And that's the minimum level of funding. If the business achieves, greater than that minimum level that says we're going to put $5,000 in the compensation pot at this minimum level, but yet you doubled your expected performance, then that incentive could go to $50,000 and say, if we hit this, then our incentive pool is going to be $50,000, and that's how we'll spread it out. And you put a various structure in place of, this is, if the company does this, then we'll reward you. This is going to be from 10% of your pay to 70% of your pay, depending on how much influence you had over that business profit. And then maybe you have a department goal. And then you'll have an individual goal. So support staff have less control over the business. They have more control over their individual performance. So their payout is weighted more heavily on their individual performance than the business performance. Now, I know this structure can seem very complex and confusing if you've not ever seen this before or worked with this kind of program. So know that there's a lot of work that goes into establishing what the targets are, but there are people out there that can help you do it. There are perhaps your risk management company will often be a resource for compensation. There's people like me. There are variable compensation experts out there. So there's all kinds of things that you can do to get the support. And then there's example plans that you can literally just copy and paste and change what your wording is and what your structure is. So I'm going to pause again and see, does anybody have questions? I'm checking the chat. Anybody? Okay, I'll keep going. So to be successful, your senior leadership team must allow the variable pay program to work and not impede it with exceptions. The first time you do this, and there's a lot of money going out that has not gone out in years before, it can feel like panic mode. And so that senior leader, that business owner, you all can go, oh, I can't afford to do this. We got to backpedal. Well, that can't happen after you put a plan in place. So run some scenarios and get comfortable with the max amount of your hard-earned profit that you're willing to share with your employees, and then support it. Make sure your team is willing to support it. If you're basing it on performance measures, then it's got to be equitable. That does not mean equal, but it's got to be equitable across all of the people that are participating in this plan. So it doesn't mean that Whitney's got to carry more of the load than I do, and we get the same amount. You've got to make sure that your expectations are equitable. It also doesn't mean that your front office staff has to do the same work that a senior person in your organization does to earn the same amount. So it needs to be equitable. It needs to be within their ability. And when you start putting compensation plans in place, particularly with office staff and production offices and some of your seed and dirt organizations that you're developing, you've got to be externally competitive. Because that can also, when we talk about those hiring bonuses, you need to be externally competitive with hiring bonuses because people will compare. When you base it off performance, that criteria must be valid, understandable, discernible. That means that somebody's really got to be able to say, okay, I need to do this in order to earn that. If they've got questions, then you've got a confusing plan and you're not going to get the behaviors that you're looking for. All right, I'm pausing again. Any other questions? All right, incentive plans. Let me check the chat. What is a method to use if you're finding out if you're externally competitive? So there are several methods. If, for example, internal office staff is pretty easy to find. I'm going to put kscale.com, two resources, and then LinkedIn. Believe it or not, Indeed, that online job advertising platform, is a pretty good resource locally for what organizations are paying in variable pay. And you'll see it listed as variable pay or bonus or incentive opportunity. So if I've got a bookkeeper, I can go and look at Indeed bookkeeper jobs, and then I can see what the market is paying in incentive or bonus, because it'll show that job and it'll say 40 employers in your area have a bonus opportunity from $0 to $500. Another great tool is payscale.com. Payscale.com is a place where, and there's a free version, but there's also a paid version. It's not very expensive, where you actually can input your job and your expectations, your location, what experience you're looking for. Again, these are non-agriculture based jobs generally, so non-field workers, but all of the other jobs you can put into pay scale, put all your parameters in, and it will give you a market-based pay rate in your geographic area. Yes, even in Eastern North Carolina, or in Southern Georgia, or wherever you might happen to be. And then it will also tell you what the average incentive or bonus opportunity is for that job. So those are two of my favorite that I go to. And I'm happy to help anybody walk through how you get started on either one of those. So those are some good resources. So incentive plans should motivate to perform at a higher level, not encouraging them to engage in questionable behavior. So when you are developing your ideas, do not just develop your targets and your behaviors in a vacuum. You need to explore with your team members. All right, if this were in place, what would you do? What are the behaviors that would get you to do X, Y, or Z more efficiently, following the compliance rules, making sure that we are not skipping any steps, whatever it is that you're asking them to work faster, to not bruise things, to work smarter, to not goof off. I mean, those are the kinds of things that you're trying to correct when you put some kind of incentive plan in place. So commission components, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on commission, but in sales organizations particularly, commission is effective. And commission components need to have some kind of influence that person exerts over the customer's decision. So, Pepe, if you're out there selling and you've got one client and they keep upping their order, you're doing a good job. I want to then put a commission structure because I want to pay you to go and sell product. Commission can have a mix of new business to account development or account deepening. You don't just want to focus on expanding current accounts. Typically, you want to bring in new business. And so you can have a mix on how you're going to pay for new business versus expanded business versus retention of business. Because again, if the Wegmans buys the same amount of product every single year, then and you're paying commission, you got to figure out how I'm going to compensate that person for maintaining that, because that's important too. Think about the business sales cycle, and you think about behaviors that you're encouraged. So again, flat and variable can get very complex. It depends on how complex you want to get. I would encourage you to go simple first until your organization grows in complexity, and then you can add some of that complexity to it. So best practices. I don't want to overwhelm you, but I do want to share some best practices. It needs to be written. It doesn't need to be verbally communicated, and you need to think through all of the possible exceptions if you can. How performance measures are set. So write your expectations. Who is going to be eligible for the plan? And I'd encourage you not to put names of people, but roles of people performing that job. So the CEO, the farm manager, the accounting leader. So whatever your titles are, that way you're not tying it to a person's name and it will live on in perpetuity. How payouts are calculated, when payouts will be made, when incentives are earned. Now, and then when people could earn their incentive, what happens when people leave? They are on a leave of absence. There's maternity leave. Somebody has passed away, or they become disabled. Again, there's lots of things that you need to develop, but there are tools and templates out there. You don't have to create it on your own. However, you do want to talk to somebody that has some expertise. For example, if you're going to pay an annual incentive from January to December, the reality is you're not paying it out on the December 31st paycheck, because you've got to take into account and assess how the business performed and what that December contribution was. Oftentimes, it takes 30 to 60 days for you to go through those calculations for an incentive plan, and you're paying it out on February 28th. Well, What happens though between January and February if somebody leaves? So there's things that you want to consider. A bonus at the holidays, you can appreciation, you pay it out at the end of the year. Anything else, you're going to pay it after the fact, but it's sort of in arrears. So you got to give yourself time to process, calculate, make decisions, get approval, etc. And most people don't think about that. They're like, it's December, I need to pay my incentive. You can't do it. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. So there's a lot that goes into implementing variable compensation. So bonuses, incentives, and commission. They have very different structures. They can have very different outcomes, but you can put in basic parameters around paying variable pay with your organization with the right thought, with some attention, and the willingness to spend a little time. Don't just roll it out because you have a great idea. You do need to spend some time thinking about it. All right, so I've been talking for 45 minutes. Wow. What questions do you have? I don't want to scare you off, but I also don't want you to run in just without thinking through it. You still thinking about variable pay after this 45 minutes of, oh, be careful? Hopefully you are. It can be a great way to show appreciation to your employees, to value their contribution. It also gives you some control over those salary dollars that are rapidly increasing right now. It's a way for you to reward and compensate without putting in big salary increases, because who knows where this market is going right now. We've seen, 15 to 20% movement in base pay. Is it going to stay there? Is it going to change? Is it going to decline again? Who knows? But putting variable pay in can give you a bridge as you're thinking through, how do I want to change my base pay structure? And you don't have to live with it for the rest of that employee's life. Incentives, commissions, bonuses can help you bridge that gap. Michael, any other questions from you?
I actually had one more. How much information if you're a fairly decent sized company, how much information should you share with your employees about the income level of the company and how their pay is related to that income level? So when the company does well, we're going to reward you, but how do you do that? Just how do you do that, I guess,
So that's a great question. So the short answer is, you don't want to divulge how much money you're earning if you are a closely held private company, and you don't want all your employees to know, but you can talk about percentages. So you can say, if we sell our crop, if we sell 80% of our crop at our target dollar amount, then we will pay incentive. If we exceed that, then we will, by 5% or 10% or 25%, then we will pay out an incentive. You can talk about percentages, which is a way to give employees indication about how well the company performed without divulging the dollar amount. That's my go-to way. Percentages, anybody can talk percentages, but they mean nothing unless you know what the number is based on. So that's one way to do it. Larger organizations, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then you share with them every year where we're at percentage wise rather than dollar wise. Okay.
Rather than dollar wise, you can base it all on percentages. So you'll notice I'll pull up, I'm gonna share my screen again. And this is the reason this particular slide right here, you'll notice it's all in percentages. Yeah. There's no dollar amount. There's no dollar amount on the corporate. There's no dollar amount on the payout range of 0 to 150% of their target. Their target is all based on percentages, and that percentage can be based on the performance of the company. So that payout range you see when it goes to 150% of target, that means that potentially the company has performed 150% better than they thought when they put this plan in place. So you can pay, that's how you put in some of those percentages and in that conversation.
Okay.
So Catherine, you've got a question on bonuses for H-2A workers. I am not an H-2A worker expert, and I don't know if there's any restrictions that limit you from how you can pay H-2A in bonuses. So I would say everything potentially that we've talked about could apply, but you would need to look at H-2A ramifications if there are any parameters. If everything has to be equal, or if you can put variable pay in. And I did not think about looking at that before the session today, because I am not that expert, but there are people out there, and we can work to get some answers, Michael, and maybe send it out as either a resource or some things. Yeah.
Yep.
Great question. What other questions? So have I made your head hurt? Hopefully not, but I hope I've given you some things to think about and how you can positively implement some of these options to reward your employees, get the behaviors that you're seeking for, and yet stay out of the ditch. We don't want anybody getting in trouble or getting sideways because they put in a ill thought out compensation plan that had unintended consequences and was not what you intended. That's the whole thing. And that's the challenge with variable pay, is thinking through every possible scenario that you can to know how you put those walls in, those boundaries, to make sure that you haven't left some kind of loophole, and also that you don't create those unintended consequences like Wells Fargo did several years ago. Any other questions? Well, if not, thanks for joining. Those of you that are listening on the replay, thanks for listening in. And as always, if we can be a help through the EFM program, please let us know. We are in the sign up phase. So if you have people in your organization that are interested in attending the 2023 EFM cohort, we are excited about the faculty, the programming, and the registration link is alive. Carly, could you drop, or Mike, could you drop the registration link in the chat box? We would love to have you, people from your organization, attend, and a couple of y'all are alum, so please help us spread the word. We're starting to fill up seats. We look forward to seeing people from your organization in January. Carly just dropped it in. You can go there and you can get all the information, and you can share that link with friends in your network. We'd love to have your recommendations. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.